And we're back. We are here with another podcast episode, and it is, in fact, the long-awaited Zelena Part 2. A whole nother recap to go, and we are going to talk everything Zelena. We're not going to get to the end. Grande Fratello did just come to an end a week ago, 2 weeks ago almost, and there's still a lot to cover. We're not going to hit it all today. This is going to be broken into another part, so bear with me here, but this is going to be Zelena Part 2. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Alexis Jade, and this is No Straight Answers, the podcast where we talk everything sapphic and nothing is off limits, but I can't guarantee I'm going to give you any straight, in quotation marks for podcast listeners, answers. Once again, unsure on that slogan. Give me a few episodes and we're probably going to change that one up. I don't know. Or if you guys like it, we'll stick with it. I don't know. I say this every episode. At some point, something's got to change. Or not. Or it's going to stay. So I'm not going to stall any longer on this one. I think we're going to try to get right into it. And get into the Zelena because there is a lot to cover. We are covering a lot in this episode. And even in this episode, there's going to be a lot that we skip. Okay? I want to give a forewarning the same way I did in the first episode. There are going to be moments that if you have been following the Zelena bandwagon train crazy cult for this entire time, then you're gonna be listening to this and be like, oh my god, you missed this part, you missed this part, you missed this moment, oh, these were such good moments. If that happens, or most likely when that happens, please just put it in the comments if you're on YouTube and so other people can see, because I'm sure people who maybe haven't seen the show or are looking for more context or other clips or whatever would love to know. So if there are things you think I missed, please put it in the comments for other people to see. But otherwise, there is going to be stuff I purposely skip over just because there is so much to try to go over. And on top of that, there are just some moments where it's so hard to remember the timeline of events. Like some things I'm like, did this happen first or did this happen first? And then did that happen? And it's just like, was this the same day? It's just, it's a lot. And I'm trying my best. But if there's anything that you're like, oh, this was such a good moment, I can't believe she didn't mention it, please put it in the comments. And if you're listening on only a podcast platform, then please feel free to check it out on YouTube or go on my Twitter page, and I'm sure you'll see the comments there as well. You can comment under the post when I post this there too. But yeah, so just a forewarning about that. I will probably be skipping over some chunks of stuff and some vital scenes and moments and whatever, but feel free to put it in the comments below. Nicely. Now, if anyone isn't familiar, or not familiar, if anyone doesn't remember, we ended episode 1 at New Year's Eve. So, if you haven't seen part 1, as much as I don't want you to leave this video or podcast, go to episode 1 of my podcast, that is part 1 of Zelena, and you can listen to the very beginning recap all the way to New Year's Eve, and this podcast episode is going to start directly after New Year's Eve, okay? So go listen to that now if you haven't. Otherwise, if you have, stay here, and that's where we're starting off. New Year's Eve. So after New Year's Eve, it was like a beautiful night for them. Just if you don't recall from the way it ended, it was very like rom-com-esque, and it felt very real and authentic, and like they were both kind of approaching their emotions for each other, and Elena was starting to really break through, and I was like, oh my god, this is it. This is the moment they're gonna get together. Like, it's gonna happen. And I was on a high. I think most people were on a high. I mean, the drawing the hearts on the glass, like, you can't get any more rom-com than that. And it just really felt like they were gonna start hitting it off and maybe get together, and things were gonna start happening. And we were all kind of like refreshing our browsers every single day. If you were watching along, you were probably doing the same thing. You had the stream up on your laptop every day. I'm working a full-time job, and I'm sitting here like checking Twitter, checking the stream now and then just to make sure I'm not missing anything, messaging in group chats, and like the whole nine, because it's you're just waiting for every single update. I would say things didn't exactly transpire the way we thought they would. Also, side note, I forgot to mention this. If there is still lag on this video, I am super sorry. I keep trying to fix the lag on this mic and video connection, and I have 2 different sources, and it's so weird because when I'm filming and I do test runs and stuff, it looks normal. And then when I go and post it on YouTube, it's not normal anymore. So I'm not sure how to fix the lag. I keep changing the settings on it, and so we'll see if this one's better. If not, I'm sorry. If anyone has advice, please put it in the comments, but I don't know. On my screen, it looks fine. When I edit it, it looks fine, and then I go to YouTube and post it, and there's a delay. Don't know what that's about. Anyways, sorry if that's the case. Moving on. Things didn't transpire the way we thought they would. That being said, there was still some cute moments directly after New Year's Eve. Like, we had moments of them cuddling in bed together. We had Elena crying in Zaudi's arms, and it was a very cute, sentimental moment. I remember I was on a Twitter Space Live when it was happening. Actually, a lot of these moments coming up now is when I was doing spaces and things like that before, but now is when I really started getting into spaces, like Twitter spaces where other people could speak and we'd all be talking together. And that's when it started to get interesting, because we would be live watching the stream together and things would go down and we would be watching it all at the same time. So a lot of you listening to this podcast right now might have actually been there for that. You might remember being on this space with me in these moments. So it's kind of cool because you might remember watching this with me, or remember my reaction or other speakers in the space's reactions to these moments, or the chaos that ensued. But if you weren't there, just know that this was being basically group watched. And a lot of the moments I'm about to talk about, some of you witnessed them with me. So if you were there, you know, I'm sorry for putting you through this trauma with me, but we had some good times, some good laughs, and also some good mental breakdowns together as a group. But anyways, moving on. What happens next? Let me check my notes. Yes, I have notes, because otherwise I will never remember all of this. So the easiest way to summarize all of this is just, like I said, I'm going to be skipping some key moments, some key scenes, and I'm sorry. But to summarize all the little cute moments and things that happened is we had Elena and Zaudi dancing in the kitchen. We had them baking cakes together. They were cuddling on the couch. They were cuddling outside. They were in the saunas together. They were making food together. They were sitting next to each other at dinner. They were still very close and very cuddly, and everything was going well. They had an adorable hand-holding moment in bed, which is a viral clip of them. If you haven't seen it on TikTok somewhere, you will at some point. It was a very cute moment where they're asleep, kind of asleep in quotation marks. I don't know, where they were holding hands in bed, cuddling in bed. They kissed. They had the famous Spider-Man kiss on the couch where Elena kisses Zaudi, who's laying down. Like, they were cuddling on the couch for like 30 minutes or something. And then Elena gets up and kisses Zaudi like 3 times on the mouth and gets up. And then we have a moment where they have like a good proper kiss outside on the seats, like on these little lawn chair things outside by the pool. They're cuddling, laying there, and they just have like a full-blown kiss right there in front of other people, by the way. That will come into play in part 3, I guess, when things start getting weird. But yeah, they had quite a few very cute, very like relationship-esque, flirty / situationship moments that you were like, okay, stuff's going down. They were playing cards together with, as we call, the retirement home, which is all the older people who were in the house, who we thought at the time were good allies to have in the house for Zaudi, that they were good influences. And because Elena was close with them and we were like, yes, Zaudi, stick with them, we were wrong about that. Just a little, I'm blanking on the word, a little teaser, I guess. Spoiler, that's the word I'm looking for. A little spoiler. Turns out they weren't the best to hang out with, but that's for part 3. But they would hang out with their retirement home, and they would play cards, and they would cuddle while they're playing cards, and, you know, kiss each other on the cheek and all this other stuff. And it was all super, super cute and adorable, and it was going well, one would say. I would say we'd be watching together on the spaces, and we'd be watching the stream and be giving direct translations and like watching the moments together and replaying them and being like, oh my god, this is so cute, and pinning it to the space. And yeah, it was super fun. It was fun to watch all their cute moments. Things seemed to be on the up for them, and we were pretty optimistic about the ship of Zelena seemed to be sailing pretty well. There was also the cute puntada with them, which I actually think maybe could have been in part 1. This is where I say the timeline gets very confusing. In hindsight, I can't remember it all in the correct order, but Grande Fratello put together a cute video montage of them during the puntada, which is like the live show event. I don't know if I explained that in part 1. The puntada is the live show event that happens, and it's on for like 3 hours. So there's the live streams, the live feed of the house, and then in Italy on their TV stations for 3 hours twice a week, there was puntadas, where it was like You would vote the votes would happen on who you want to eliminate. They would put together clips and put together the drama in the house and all this stuff. That really comes into play in part 3 because that's when shit started getting real wild. In the beginning, Grande Fratello put together a really cute clip of Zowdy and Elena, of them with like the song Ticento, which has now become famous within the fandom and people who are following this, and just them having cute moments. Basically put a montage together of them being like in a relationship. And yeah, we had no indications at the time that the show had any intentions of separating them. We also had no indications that they weren't gonna start smooth sailing. And then they kind of started hitting some bumps of the road. So this is where we start getting into some more of the puntadas. Now, I can't remember what puntada happened when or what dates or which one happened first, but I do know that one of the biggest turning points was the puntada when Zowdy was up for elimination. And I believe it was that puntada where they finally showed the clip of Zowdy's kiss with Alfonso that we talked about in part 1. I think it was that one, or it was the one before that. I'm blanking. But either way, Elena has now seen the kiss and it bothers her. And then there's the puntada where, because if you remember, Elena was all like, oh, it's okay, it's whatever. Well, she sees the clip and she has like a mental breakdown. But then on top of that, Zowdy's up for elimination. And this is the first time I had been watching when Zowdy was up to get nominated to be eliminated. And so I was part of the voting to make sure she wasn't. And we were like really going full force to make sure Zowdy was not eliminated. And she wasn't. She wasn't eliminated. And Elena was overjoyed. Elena was super happy. She gets up, she's like crying, she's anxious, and then she gets up and she hugs Zowdy. They grab each other's faces and like look in each other's eyes, and it's super cute. And we're all like, oh my God, look how much she loves her and how much she wanted her to stay in the house. And like, I thought they were gonna kiss on the spot. I thought they were gonna have a little smooch, or at the very least when the puntada was over, I thought they were gonna like run into the house and be cuddling and kissing and everything is all hunky-dory. Boy, was it not. Was it not. During this puntada, Shyla speaks up, and one of the girls that Elena had been kind of beefing with in the house from before I was even watching the show. And Shyla and Elena basically are yelling at each other across the couches during the puntada, and Shyla's telling Elena, you're not clear with your feelings for Zowdy. You're not very clear. You basically just saying that she doesn't really like Zowdy, that she doesn't think Elena really likes Zowdy. And all of us were like, how could Shyla say this? She's so wrong. Look how much she cared about Zowdy. Mind your own business, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, it turns out Shyla might have been a little bit right. But that's for part 3. Part 2 is Elena has the famous quote, "Don't talk about my feelings for Zowdy," of course said in Italian. Or Elena's butchered version of Italian, no offense. She yells this across, and we're all like, yeah, that's right, Elena, you defend your feelings for Zowdy and your woman. And we were all like, yeah, we were living for this moment. We were like, this is it. She loves this girl. She's like, don't talk about my feelings for her. It's just so funny as I'm telling this on the podcast and looking back how duped we all were. Like, in these moments, we were so excited. I remember making my updates in the spaces, and we'd all be like, oh my God. And this is a topic of debate of whether we were wrong, fooled like Zowdy, or if there's a little bit of truth in these moments, while also a little bit of deception or whatever. This is all stuff for part 3, or maybe even a post all the parts debate discussion or something. I don't know. In hindsight, looking back at these moments, I'm like, what was real and what wasn't? But once again, I'm getting too far ahead of myself. This is part 2. So Elena had been arguing also with a girl, Ilaria, in the house. And Ilaria basically accusing Elena of like being a liar and all this other stuff. They were just beefing. Apparently, now we didn't know this at the time, after the puntada, Elena's emotions are high. Like, she is on one. She had been crying. She is like on a rampage. This is like the first Elena crash out I recall watching. She had some before I started watching the show, but this is the first one I recall watching. And at the time, I was like, this is totally valid. Like, she was attacked at the puntada. Everyone's doubting her feelings for Zowdy. Like, she is going off and she's going on one. Little did I know that would be not be the last of her crash outs. In fact, they get much worse. But Elena starts crashing out. And What we didn't know at the time is the cameras on the live feed were just showing like the kitchen or something. And it turns out, because they show the clip at a later puntada date, that Elena and Zoudy were in the bedroom on their shared bed while Elena was crying. This is directly after the puntada. And Ilaria comes up to Elena and basically gets in her face, and they're screaming at each other. And Ilaria kind of like kicks Elena. Actually, when you watch the clip, Zoudy, being the utter gentlewoman she is, she puts herself in between Elena and Ilaria, prevents them from like actually fist fighting each other. And I think Zoudy actually ends up getting like kicked instead of Elena in the process, and basically just like wraps her body around Elena to stop her from fighting and holding her back, while Ilaria screams at her, until Alfonso is actually the one who comes in and grabs Ilaria and is like pulling her back. So this fight altercation happens, was not shown live, but they do show us the replay of the clips in the next puntada. But we don't know this at the time is happening. We just know that, I think we found out through like hearing the mics of people talking that Ilaria and Elena had gotten in an argument, but I think that was like the extent of what we knew at the time. So we just assumed Elena was still crashing out about just the whole puntada and everything. Now, this is kind of the start of Elena going on her spiral crash out. She starts not doing well. Tensions rise in the house. Elena's currently fighting with Shyla. She's fighting with Ilaria. She's fighting with Lorenzo and Jessica and basically everyone else in that kind of corner of the house. And Elena's mental stability starts deteriorating. She starts having a short temper, a short fuse. She is visibly like drained. You could see it on her face that she's just not the same. Zoudy tries to be there for her, and granted, Zoudy doesn't always say the right thing. She does try to be there for her. She seeks advice from people like Luca, who's close to Elena, on how to manage the situation, and Luca's like, just be there for Zoudy, be there for her, and blah, blah, blah. And Zoudy's like, okay. And, Elena just is on like a downward spiral. And as a reminder, Elena to this point had now been in the house for like 4 months. Zoudy had only been in the house for about a month at this point, because remember, Elena came in earlier. So to be fair, she had been in the house for longer and was, had been gone through quite the ringer already. But yeah, this was kind of like the start of her downfall. Now, due to this, Elena and Zoudy start having frequent arguments. They went from like New Year's Eve, everything is lovely, to just constant bickering and arguing and not understanding each other. The famous Capito. They didn't Capito shit. Nothing was Capitoed. I feel like every conversation they had just went in circles and circles and circles and circles. It just was not going well. They just, like, they would have some arguments where they would literally go 2 days without talking to each other or interacting at all. Zoudy would stay with Kiara in her bed some nights and like be venting to Alfonso and other things and venting to Kiara, and it just like was not going well. Meanwhile, Zoudy is like, they would have these fights and they'd fight and then they'd make up, and they'd have these moments like when they didn't talk for 2 days, and then eventually Zoudy kept trying to approach very slowly, and Elena eventually was like, I'm sorry, and Zoudy was like, I'm sorry. And then Zoudy would have these cute moments where she would tell Kiara, like, I just really want Elena. Like, I just really like her. At some point, this is kind of fast forwarding a bit, but at some point, Javier and Zoudy end up having conversation when Javier starts, we're going to get there, but Javier starts to become more of a presence around Elena and Zoudy. But at one point, Elena's in bed sleeping, and Zoudy and Javier and Alfonso are in the bathroom getting ready for bed, and basically Javier starts asking about Zoudy's sexuality, because I think there was a puntada where something was brought up about it, and Zoudy basically says, like, and he's like, oh, so you like girls and guys? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, so you like Alfonso and you like Elena? And she's like, no, I only like Elena. And he's like, but you like guys too. Apparently Javier has never heard of bisexuality before. And so she's like, no, I only like Elena. I only have feelings for Elena. And then I'm trying to think of how to phrase this because we haven't gotten to this part yet. But basically, at this point that I'm talking about, I guess I'll fast forward for a second. And I'm sorry this is a little choppy, but I guess I'll fast forward for a second and say at this point, Zowdy is doubting Elena's feelings for her. She's doubting if she's jealous of Javier or of Zowdy when they're like talking or talking to other people. And like literally just talking, not flirting, but talking. If Elena even likes her and things like that. And so in this conversation, just because of events that transpire, and in this conversation, in this conversation, Zowdy says like, I only like Elena, but she likes you. And Javier's like, no, she doesn't. And he's like, who do you think she's jealous of? Or no, I'm sorry, Alfonso in this conversation the whole time, just kind of sitting there is like, who do you think she's jealous of? And Zowdy says, she's jealous of you, to Javier. Javier says, no, she's jealous of you. And then Alfonso goes, she likes you, Zowdy. Like, she likes you. That was kind of a moment, too, that also kind of allowed Javier and Zowdy to grow a little bit closer as friends. It ended up being like I think it was like a 2-hour long conversation. Like Alfonso ended up leaving at one point and it was just Javier and Zowdy talking, which this might be triggering for people who know what's coming in part 3. But yeah, so there's just a lot of conversations like that happening. And now going back to where I was before, I also, sorry, I'm staring at my notes and I'm realizing I didn't put this in like quite the right order. I do want to give a mention to Kiara because I've said her name a few times in part 1 and part 2, and I don't think I've really explained their relationship for anyone new listening. But Kiara is another contestant in the house who's a little bit older than Zowdy, just by a few years, I think. And her and Zowdy become close friends. They were basically already friends by the point that I started watching, and they became close friends in the house. And Kiara was there for Zowdy throughout all of this journey with Elena and Zowdy. When things were good, Kiara would be like, like encouraging her, kind of teasing her and things like that. And when things would be bad, Kiara was there when Zowdy would cry in her arms or vent to her in their bed. Like they would have these bedroom talk sessions where we'd get excited because if it was happening on stream or something, we'd be like, oh, Zowdy's in Kiara's bed. So we knew we were about to get some tea. Like whatever happened between Zowdy and Elena, Zowdy was about to spill all the tea to Kiara, which would mean we get to hear it. So as long as the camera stayed on them. So we would enjoy those moments, but we knew Kiara and Zowdy were very close. Kiara was a very good friend for Zowdy. Kiara did question Elena's true feelings for Zowdy, and she told this to Zowdy. She'd be like, I kind of think she likes Javier. I think she's not being totally honest with you. I think she's being confusing. And Zowdy would kind of agree with her, but then also kind of defend Elena. And at the time, I admit, I was like, Kiara, you're not being a good friend. Like, support Zowdy. And we were also all under the delusion that Elena truly was just like in love with Zowdy and couldn't admit it. So we were all like, she doesn't see what Zowdy sees though. And like, Elena truly loves Zowdy. Unfortunately, as we come to find out eventually, Kiara was right. Kiara was right about a lot of things. And Kiara is very smart. I always said that if she was in the USA version of Big Brother, she would be a very good contestant because she's very strategic and very smart. But I will say her relationship with Zowdy was very genuine. But she knew what she was doing in that game. And it proved it because homegirl ends up making it pretty far. Which, I forgot to mention, at the time we're recording this right now, Grande Fratello is over. We do have the results of the winner of Grande Fratello. And what happened with Zowdy, Kiara, with Elena, everything else. The contestants are now out of the house. So there's a lot happening there, kind of. So at this point, Elena is having a lot of beef with a lot of people in the house. Things are not going well. And this leads to the infamous Jessica and Elena argument. Jessica and Elena showdown. So, this is where things really change. This is where things really change on the show. Zowdy's in the shower, so she is not at the dinner table. Everyone else is having dinner. And Elena's passing out bread. And Jessica, asks for the basket of bread. And Elena does not give it to her. She does the, almost could have had it thing. But in a not funny way. In, no. She was giving it to everyone else but her. Jessica's kind of like, what the fuck? So they start arguing. Jessica says some pretty mean things to Elena. I'm not gonna lie. She says some pretty like derogatory, discriminatory things to Elena. Elena basically snaps. She gets up, goes to the kitchen. Jessica is still going off. Elena does throw in some exchanges as well, but she fills up a kettle full of water, not hot water to our knowledge, throws it at Jessica, like throws the water at her, and then chucks the kettle pot. The only person to notice what's about to happen, I believe, was Max, who gets up and nods to Javier and says, like, pay attention. Javier stands up, but does not intervene whatsoever with the kettle or stopping Elena. He watches it all go down. And I believe it is actually, it's either Max and one of the other guys. It's either Lele or someone else. I forget. But they're the ones who actually grab Elena and take the kettle, and they're like, no. And then Javier walks away with Elena out of the room. This is important because later on in the putata, Javier is like praised for stepping in. And when I say praised, I mean they do a whole thing where they're like, Javier, thank you for being there for her and stepping up and blah, 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 blah. And Javier didn't do anything. He didn't do a single thing. He watched it happen. And yet the guys who actually stepped in, even though they kind of also watched it happen, they at least like took the kettle away and like pulled her aside. Or Zowdy, who actually put herself in between Ilaria and Elena when they were physically fighting, does not get any sort of acknowledgement, but Javier gets praise for literally doing nothing but standing and watching it all happen. I don't know, but that's Italian TV, I guess. This happens. Elena walks away with Javier and is basically told by production that she's sleeping in like a separate suite for the night while production decides what they're gonna do. And keep in mind, to this point, we still didn't know that Ilaria and Elena got into a physical fight in the bedroom. Javier and Elena are in this separate room talking. Javier ends up being the only one allowed in that room to like talk with Elena. Zowdy gets out of her shower, comes through the kitchen, finds out what happens, tries to go to the room to talk to Elena, is told no by production. She's not allowed to go talk to Elena. Basically, that entire night, she's not allowed to go talk to Elena. She never does. Javier's the only one in there, and Javier ends up spending the night with her in there. This actually leads to an argument between Elena and Zowdy because Elena thinks that Zowdy didn't care and didn't realize that she was not even in the kitchen when it happened and didn't know the full story of what happened because Zowdy had heard what happened from some people, but she was like, I chose to not ask around because I didn't want to be told. Like, I didn't want people giving me their versions. I wanted to hear from you what happened. And so Elena basically avoided Zowdy and only hung out with Javier, thinking that Zowdy didn't care and was like siding with other people or something, which is stupid. And she didn't know that Zowdy had come to the room to ask for her either. Next day, Elena is allowed out of the room. And yeah, things kind of go from there. They basically, the rest of the week, interactions are normal, and we're like, okay, so Elena's not getting immediately disqualified because she would have been by now. Basically, Elena and Zowdy are now not that close. Elena's kind of hovering with Javier more. So remember when I said Javier wasn't really a presence in part one and he wasn't really important? This is when he starts to kind of become a figure that unfortunately we have to watch on our screens every day. It was kind of out of nowhere because like I said, when I started watching the show, I really didn't even know who Javier was because he really wasn't involved whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, because of this kettle incident, he was just there. Like all the time, he was just there with Elena. And yeah, unfortunately, this is the part where Javier becomes involved in our story. So basically, even when Elena and Zowdy make up, Javier is still just around. He's hovering around all the time. He's there all the time. They basically never have moments alone anymore because he's always constantly there. Elena and Javier start to get a little bit more flirty, and we're all kind of like, weird, but whatever. And at the time, I was kind of defending it like, you know, they've been in the house the whole time for the past 4 months together. They are friends. They do have a little bit of history together. So, like, I do think she trusts him and is comforted by him, and she's going through a lot right now. So I kind of excused it, kind of being like, you know, it makes sense that they're close because she's, like, obviously not doing well and going through it right now. So she needs, a good friend. Keep in mind, she only knew Zowdy for, like, a month at this point. So it makes sense, right? If only that was the actual truth. It wasn't. Guys, up until this point, I didn't really see Javier as much of a threat. I don't think most of us saw Javier as a threat. And threat is a bad way to put it, but I don't know another word for it right now. But most of us watching the show were kind of like, they're friends, whatever, not a big deal. Don't really care. That all changed when the infamous, and I'm sorry for those of you who've been following along on this journey, this phrase is about to be traumatizing, the white party. The infamous white party happens, and everything for Zelena goes downhill. So anyone who didn't watch the show before, which is probably a small percentage of you, but still, which I'm sorry for the way I'm explaining this, because there's probably people who could explain it better, but it's just so much, and I'm sorry if it's choppy. But that being said, the white party, basically there was every like Friday night before, or Saturday night before there was a puntada on Monday, they would have a party in the house, and some of them were super lame, some of them were themed. It just was always something different. This night was themed all white. Everyone had to wear all white, and they just played music and danced in the house. That was pretty much it. So why was this so traumatizing, you may ask? Well, the night starts interesting. Okay, Elena and Zowdy are sitting next to each other in the kitchen. At this point, they had some other sort of like little argument again, and Elena and Zowdy are not really talking. They sit next to each other at the table, and we're all like, oh, they're sitting next to each other. They look at each other next to each other and make dead-on eye contact, like full-blown staring each other up and down at the camera. I mean, at the camera. I'm looking at the camera. That's why I'm thinking it. Staring at each other, dead in the eyes, full-blown deadlock eye contact. We're all watching this, and we're like, holy shit. Like, they look like they're about to jump each other's bones across the table. Well, then something very comical actually happens, and Alfonso, being what a smart man he is, decides to sit in between them in that very moment. And I swear to God, this is probably one of the funniest moments on this show that happened. Elena and Zowdy, dead eye contact right here. Alfonso sits right in between them and sits there. And they continue, Elena and Zowdy continue to look at each other. They literally just move their heads to the side and continue staring at each other, making eye contact. And Alfonso sits there with his plate, and he kind of just looks up, looks at one, looks at the other, looks down at his food, and is kind of like, I might have just interrupted something. And they just keep staring at each other until eventually he gets back up. We think he gets up and moves away and gets the hint. He does move away briefly. Elena and Zowdy begin talking, and as Zowdy's talking to Elena, we see Elena's eyes just start to wander, like she's not listening to a thing Zowdy's saying. And Zowdy kind of looks at her like, hello? And Elena's eyes come back, and she's like, sorry, what? And then Alfonso comes back, sits back down, and is kind of just like, he knows he's interrupting a moment. I don't know if he did this like intentionally or if there's genuinely nowhere else for him to sit. Or what was happening there, but he still sat there. And basically that was the last time Elena and Zowdy talked or looked at each other the rest of the night. After everyone was done eating, Zowdy stayed talking to Alfonso and a few other people at the table, and Elena gets up and goes by Javier. And Javier and Elena basically, to try not to re-traumatize you all, I'll keep it vague and just say they spend the rest of the night touching and flirting. And Elena is sitting in between his legs, has her hand basically on his crotch. I said I wasn't going to keep traumatizing, and I basically just re-traumatized you. Sorry about that. Yeah, they're just all over each other. And Zowdy kind of sees this and is just like, she doesn't get involved. She keeps a step away. And then they all go dancing by the pool. And Zowdy attempts to go by Elena and attempts to kind of like dance by her and dance with her and whatever. And Elena basically just totally ignores Zowdy, and Javier is across the pool from her, and she's like splashing water at him. She's singing at him, and Zowdy kind of looks at it and realizes what's happening and gets up and goes to the other side of the pool to go dance in between Kiara and Shyla, and then dances for a bit, goes to the bedroom, has a cry on the bed, hugging a pillow, and then comes back out, and Elena and Javier continue talking the rest of the night. They don't kiss. They don't do anything that night, anything like that. But that was the fear. Like, I remember watching this live with everyone and we were all like, oh my God, if they fucking kiss right now, it's game over. Like, what is Zelena doing? And I remember up until this point, I had been trying to be super like, they're friends. I understand. She's very close with him. It makes sense they hug a lot and stuff because they are very close. She needs comfort. This night, I was like, I think I remember in Spaces, I was like, I'm trying really hard, but I don't know what the hell Elena is doing right now. I don't know what she's thinking, but this is not okay. And yeah, that's kind of the night that screwed up everything. So after this, Elena and Zowdy do end up still having some cute moments where they still continue to like play cards together. It's like, it doesn't really make sense, but poor Zowdy was just so into Elena that as soon as Elena kind of started coming back to her, she couldn't resist. And Elena did. Like, she would be flirty and touchy with Javier, and then she would go to Zowdy and be cuddling her and kissing her on the cheek and hugging her from behind and like doing all the things all over again. And yeah, it really seemed like Elena was confused at this point. And we were like, okay, is she just now confused because she saw comfort in Javier during that whole dramatic stuff happening and now she's confused on her feelings, or like what's happening? And or does she not realize how bad the touchy, because at this point too, they just kept saying, Javier and Elena kept saying, we're just friends, we're just friends, we're just friends. I was like, okay, maybe she just doesn't realize how bad this looks. And they are just friends and she doesn't realize that this is not a good look and that it's hurting Zowdy. But yeah, it was just weird moments of them, like, Zowdy trying to detach from Elena and like not be as affectionate, but then as soon as Elena would come forward, Zowdy was down. She was all over it again. So that was kind of like where we were at. And then the next puntada happens. Now, this is when we get the daily clips showing us that Ilaria and Elena get into the fight in the bedroom, and we're all like, oh my God. Because up until this point, we're like, something might be coming. Elena might be getting some form of punishment because of this kettle incident, which became known as Kettlegate. And we're all like, something might come to Elena, some form of punishment, something. We just didn't know what. Well, we see this clip with her and Ilaria, and we're like, oh, hell no, Ilaria's got to get eliminated. Like, something has to happen to Ilaria. She has to get some form of punishment. So we get to the puntada. And basically, I don't remember how it happens, to be honest with you. I don't remember if it was announced production decided this, or if this is just how... No, I think production decided, and it was like a flash. No, it wasn't a flash. I don't know. Something happened where basically Ilaria, Elena, and Jessica were sent to the main stage during the puntada. And Ilaria basically voluntarily left the show. She said that she was done, she's leaving the show, and, you know, she didn't like how she acted, and she doesn't think that this is good for her mental health to be in this house anymore, and removes herself from the show. Elena and Jessica basically end up put up for nomination for elimination together as their like punishment for the argument. We're all like, okay, so this is good because Elena's not just kicked off the show, but this is bad because now we have to vote like hell to save Elena. And vote like hell we did. We voted like mad. I think there was like huge surges of votes. I mean, I remember being part of it, holding spaces where we'd be voting. And this went on for like a whole few days, a week, whatever it is in between the next puntada, where everyone was able to vote. It wasn't a flash vote in the episode. It was like you were able to vote for multiple days. And we voted. So this week, Elena did not believe that, Zowdy did not believe Elena would leave the show. She didn't think that Elena would get eliminated. And basically, Elena's last day in the house, she spent the entire day with Zowdy. Like, she spent the day cooking with her and doing things with her and playing cards with her. And we were all like, she's like really wanting to spend her quality time with Zowdy. And she didn't really engage with Javier much the last day she was in the house. So, day of the puntada comes. The next puntada, where the results are. And despite a surge of votes and an attempt to save Elena, Elena was officially eliminated from Grande Fratello. And we were all like, there's no way. This is this is rigged, and it probably was. It probably was, because it really didn't make sense. Jessica does have a fan base, and I'm sure they did vote. However, the output of voting for Elena, there's no possible way she actually lost that. But she did. She gets eliminated. But I forgot to mention, during the puntada, that is the same episode that Zaudi's mom came to the show. And so before Elena gets eliminated, Zaudi's mom makes an appearance, reads a very beautiful letter about Zaudi's coming out story, and basically ends it by saying, like, the phenomenon that is Zelena, she kind of sneaks that in there, because remember, they're in the house. They don't know that there's this whole international audience watching this now for them. And says it's very important, and, you know, embracing your feelings. And I think Zaudi's mom at this point believed Elena was someone just struggling remember, Elena is 35. And so she hasn't fully accepted her sexuality. And she's like, you know, this could be difficult. And Elena basically just starts crying during all of this. She starts crying during her mom's speech, and you can tell that it's really touching Elena. And then they show the clips of Javier and Elena, and basically showing Zaudi watching Javier and Elena flirt and get close and all this stuff. And Elena starts crying. So that mixed with the letter, and Javier actually comes over during commercial break to try to comfort Elena. Elena tells him, like, no, like, he puts his arm around her, and she's like, no, like, you need to keep some space from me. And he's kind of like, what are you talking about? What's going on? And she was like, I need to behave better with you. Like, this isn't okay. I just, you know, I need some space. I need to behave better. This isn't right. And we are all like, oh, wow, she really has come to a realization. Like, she really is seeing how badly it looked, her interactions with Javier. She's seeing how much Zaudi cares for her. And after Zaudi's mom's letter and her appearance and that sentimental moment, and also Elena's not close with her mom either. So, like, I think everything combined, we all were like, wow, a light bulb has gone off in Elena's head, and she's realized everything now. And then she gets eliminated. Just lost my voice there for a second. And Elena gets eliminated. And that is also kind of the moment that really alters everything. Zaudi is devastated. She is so sad, crying on the couch. Kiara comes to comfort it a little bit, and then she kind of just sits there crying on the couch. And I remember when it happened, I was on my way home from work, because the puntadas would always be like towards the end of my work day. And the moment I pulled into my parking lot is when everyone's reactions to Elena being eliminated. And I was like, no fucking way. She just got eliminated. Held a space later, and yeah, we were all just like, this is it. End is Elena. This is the end. Little did we know that things were just getting started. And that is where we are going to end part 2 of the Zelena podcast episodes. Remember, this podcast isn't just Zelena, but we're talking Zelena and breaking it up into multiple parts because there's so much to talk about. But this is where we're going to end part 2 on the Zelena bandwagon, because after this it's literally, now we're just getting started. This is where things really start to get crazy. I might even have to do a part 4 just because of how much stuff happens. But yeah, this is where things really start to take a turn and really change course for Zaudi, Elena, and the ship once known as Zelena. So if you enjoyed this, please give it a like on YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify, like, rate it 5 stars or something, however that works. But I really appreciate everyone listening. If, like I said, if there's any big parts I missed out or forgot or whatever, please put them in the comments on YouTube, or come to my Twitter, and please follow me on my socials on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, because I post updates there. I still talk about Zelena and Grande Fratello and everything else there. Part 3 is going to be interesting. And part 3, I believe, I guess I can't officially confirm yet, but I believe we might have the Terror Twins on part 3. And if you know who the Terror Twins are, then you've been following along the spaces and you should be excited. If you haven't been, you're in for a treat. But if you have been, then you know that they're a hoot and a half and they would be very good to help me break down everything that happened in part 3. But as always, I appreciate everyone for watching. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast and supporting me and everything else. I really appreciate you all. And yeah, I hope you have a good day, week, night, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Also, if you follow me, and speaking of the Terror Twins, make sure you go follow Crash Rosati on Instagram. That is their Twitter account. And Alexis Jr. is making some very, very good edits and content right now. She's killing it. So please go follow them and follow their Twitters and stuff. And Nora is working on some stuff, so go follow her. She's a singer, so you should probably check her out. But thank you guys for watching. I will see you for part 3. Will not be next week. Next week will be a different episode, and then after that will be part 3, because I need time in between to plan and film and everything else, so bear with me. But thank you guys for watching. As always, I'm Alexis Jade, and this has been No Straight Answers.